14 teams come to compete, but only one will win the crown. The heart of the nation will host the Atlantic 10 Men's Basketball Championship at Capital One Arena in March of 2018. 5 days of non-stop basketball action. There can only be one champion. Don't miss this major college championship at Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C., March 7th through 11th, 2018. Buy your tickets now at Ticketmaster.com.
Welcome to the A-10 podcast, our first of the season as the men's and women's basketball season is underway. Conference play will start up soon enough, but certainly a number of the men's basketball teams and women's basketball teams are playing high-profile competition. And we want to start with Rhode Island. The preseason favorites, the Rams, are, as usual, have sort of had some curveballs dealt and thrown their way. And they've taken them all down the middle, and some they've certainly smacked out of the park, and others you have to just deal with at this time of the year where you've got some hiccups. And E.C. Matthews is out. They've had other injuries, yet the Rams are starting to sort of come together as they head toward the meat and a very difficult stretch of their non-conference schedule. And joining us here on the A-10 podcast, Rhode Island head coach Dan Hurley. Dan, let's first deal with the injury updates that you have had to deal with, certainly right off the bat. And let's start with E.C. Matthews.
Well, we've kind of gotten some really good news. I had a little inkling maybe, a couple days ago that, his next set of x-rays would come back, a little bit cleaner, than even was, originally anticipated. So, he got some x-rays done yesterday and actually starts shooting today. And he hurt his left wrist was the fracture, but it's healed to the point where he's been cleared to do some shooting today. So I think his timetable may even be ahead of the 4 weeks. It's supposed to be a 4 to 6 week injury, and there's a chance we could even see him out there before even the 4 weeks. He's a quick healer, because he's kind of used to dealing with stuff.
So that injury occurred right toward the end of that game at Nevada that you guys lost 88-81, a very difficult environment. We've seen the Wolfpack right now at this juncture as we tape on a Wednesday Wednesday, we get my days straight, that they were still undefeated. So you're not going to have them against Providence. You won't have them at Alabama. Is there a game like maybe after finals around Charleston or Iona before Christmas?
Yeah, I don't think you'll see him Friday. Alabama's a stretch, but I think anything beyond those two, I think you could definitely see him out there.
And then what about Cyril? Another key player that comes off the bench for you. What's his status?
He was dealing with closer to a hernia than an actual groin injury, and really he was our best returning front court player. In the game versus Oregon, around the 32, he had 9 and 9 against Jordan Bell as a freshman, and in the game where he kind of replaced Hassan Martin, who had fractured his kneecap in the Creighton game, and he had no business playing in the Nevada game. He didn't disclose the injury, and we were able to kind of quiet it down, over the last 10 days, and he was able to get on the court and play a little bit last night, and he's feeling much better. And when he's on the court for us, he changes us from a defensive standpoint and a rebounding standpoint. We become that gritty defensive team, when he's on the floor. So he's probably, as great as EC is and as good as our guards are, he's kind of the one, maybe the most indispensable player on the team, Langevin, because he gives us that inside presence on the defensive end, the rim protection.
Yeah, and the sophomore forward was out there for 11 minutes against Brown in your 86-62 win, scoring 7 points, couple of boards, couple of blocks. So obviously you can see his impact. Your other sort of co-favorite, if you will, you were 1A was St. Bonaventure, and they haven't had Jalen Adams because of his injury. When you have these expectations and you've got your plans set, and then you're dealt these curveballs the way you and Mark Schmidt have been sort of having to handle early in the season, how do you manage almost coaching like two teams, the one that you've got in front of you and the one that that at some point you're going to get back?
I think you have to have the mindset, with the team that, that we're not going to make any excuses, that we're going to, just attack the next game, that our program, is at a high enough level now in terms of what we've been able to achieve, particularly last March, that, if we're missing a key player or two, that we've got this championship pedigree about us that, that's going to allow us to kind of hold down the fort and win enough games and enough key games until we're at full strength.
The game that you guys had against Seton Hall, not at full strength. You're down 2 key players, as we just discussed, and you come back and you're able to win that game at the buzzer, as Terrell makes the running layup with, I think, 5 seconds left at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. What did that one win do for you guys, not just in the big picture in March and all that stuff, but in the moment when you don't have 2 key players to get a win like that?
I think it's the residual effects. I think of getting over the hump, last March, and breaking through. And I think just breaking through and winning the A-10s last year, and getting to the tournament and winning a game, and really having the Final Four team beat and kind of blowing the game in the round of 32. I just think we had a confidence about us going into the tournament, to the preseason NIT, where, we still felt like we had as good a chance as anyone to win it. And, just going out on that court and doing it, against a team that, I know going into that game, there's a lot of talk about, about Seton Hall being a second weekend team, or better, a top 2 team in the Big East, and the team that's going to challenge Villanova this year for the championship. So we knew it was a huge moment and a win that would have huge ramifications, on the goals that we've set for ourselves for what we want to do in March.
On Friday night, as you guys are playing Virginia, I'm tracking the Arizona State Xavier game, and your brother's team, unbelievable second half. They essentially run away from Xavier. Great win for Arizona State. They're looking like right now the Pac-12's best team. Even though you don't have an outcome that obviously you want, when you see the result like that, and how much Bobby, who's been on your staff at different stops, when you see what he's gone through and you see a win like that, what's your reaction?
Well, I was able to follow. I'm always able to watch or follow it right up until literally when I'm walking out onto the court. I have my own job to do, but I'm literally on Game Tracker if I can't get it on my phone, app or what have you. So we're just, we obsessively follow each other and support each other. And I think what's so rewarding about the situation at Arizona State for Bob is, just what he's gone through the last couple of years to have to have built this thing, to this point, taking over, a program for, a coach that was, that was fired and having to build it from the ground up, with his 2 hands and take a kind of a losing culture and turn the whole thing around. And just, you could see, those guards and his team playing with the same fearlessness that Bob played with as a player. And it's just so happy for him, because I know what the last 2 years have been like for him, and those Devils are real.
I was fascinated over the last couple of days of the the father-son relationships that I observed actually in New York, in Brooklyn. You had Homer Drew watching Bryce Drew, and so supportive. And I mean, he's just a genuinely just beautiful man. See your dad right there with you, watching you. You can see him just, every possession. He's so into it, watching you. And then I see Rick Pitino watching Richard Pitino, and then I'm talking to Tony Bennett, and he's telling me that Dick Bennett can't even be in the same building, can't even watch on TV because he's so wound up watching Tony's team. Can't even deal with it. What's it mean to you to see your father there? And then if you can, just put in perspective sort of your generation of seeing these fathers watching their sons follow in their footsteps.
Yeah, it's first of all, you have a great appreciation, for these other basketball families or coaching families because I understand as good as much as anyone, just the toll it takes, the demands of the job, the sacrifices that you have to make with your family. So it's obviously it's a neat thing, and to be able to share it, to be able to share the experience of your greatest moments, your greatest failures, with the people you love the most, your father. I would probably put my dad closer to probably the Dick Bennett, Doug Collins, suffering slightly during the game. But the thing about my my dad is, he's able to give me such great insight, into, our team, opponents we have playing, and in a suggestive way, not in a way of ordering ordering me to do it. And so he's with this closing of the school at St. Anthony, if my dad is going to live vicariously through me and Bob for the foreseeable future in basketball here, I think we're both excited to be a part of that.
At this point in his life and his career, especially as you said with St. Anthony's closing, does it almost feel like it's the perfect timing rather than, had this been, if you had sort of been at this level, maybe, 10 years ago, when he was still really in the throngs of what he was doing, that it might not have been the same, that now you're sort of getting him at sort of an opportune time for you where you can really, he's a little more reflective and he can be more, of a consultant as well as a father figure, that it feels like it's almost the perfect storm of where his life is and yours to have the two come together and really sort of advise you at the right time.
100%, Andy. His, retirement, I think, has sapped, some of, my father's trademark intensity, so now we're just, I think that, now we're just getting kind of the wisdom, and that this is only, my 8th year as a college head coach. Obviously, I've got a high school background and then some time at Rutgers as an assistant, and Bob's, this is his 5th year. So, we're kind of at the beginning stages of our career as college head coaches here, and to be able to share that, with my dad, at a time where, he has the time to invest and he's in a pretty good relaxed state and he can get to a lot of our games. These next several years can be I think just a great family experience.
All right. So what's harder, to build up a program to where you're a winner or to sustain it and be the favorite?
That's a tough one. I tell you, I love fixing things. I kind of look at myself as a fixer. I love taking over broken things and fixing the culture and bringing in the type of people that can build a championship level organization. So that part of it's exciting, but I think when that target's on you and sustaining winning, I think is a difficult thing. When you're on that climb and and you're chasing that target, I think it's much easier to galvanize the troops. But to keep your guys on edge after they've tasted a certain level of success, I think that's a tougher challenge and but one that you certainly embrace.
And how have you seen sort of the atmosphere and the interest evolve at URI?
Well, when I got here, even prior to taking the job and talking to some folks in the region, they talked about a fan base that was waiting to be awakened from their slumber and win a championship, get to the NCAA tournament, and you're going to see an explosion with the fan base, and I think we've seen that so far. We had a great crowd for the opener, And then obviously, with this Providence game on, coming up on Saturday, going to have one of the great atmospheres, I think, in college basketball, for that game on Saturday. And everywhere you go, especially in the southern part of the state, you get closer to Providence, getting quite as much love. But, in the southern part of the state, you really can't go anywhere without somebody coming up to you and telling you, how proud they are of the program and how pleased they are just at the quality of the kids and how we're representing the state.
As college football is winding down, I always think it's important to sort of take a moment about what the beauty of college basketball is for the most part, everyone has a chance. There's so many football schools that have zero chance of getting in any kind of, playoff or attempt to play for a national championship. Now that you're at this level in the Atlantic 10 at a school like URI, and you've seen what's happened whether it's Wichita, Gonzaga, you name it. How much do you feel like when you've got the right pieces, there's no question that you can have magical marches, every so often at a place like URI?
As long as the investment, is there, and Dave Dooley and Thor Bjorn and the university, have gotten behind the program and invested, to get us to this level, and you're just looking, whether it can be sustainable or not, and for us, again, investing every year more in the program, can you recruit, sustainably, can we continue to bring in the E.C. Matthews, the Jared Terrells, the Hassan Martins, can we continue to bring those guys into the program? Well, we've got a top 25 national recruiting class coming in, next year. So, right now this looks like a real sustainable model at URI and one that hopefully is just going to get bigger and better every year.
Well, Dan, we appreciate you joining us here on the A-10 podcast, and I can't wait for Saturday to check out the URI Providence game. As someone who partially resides in the state of Rhode Island, it's a game that I've been circling for a long time to get a sort of a feel and a sense in the ocean state of what college basketball really can deliver at URI when they take on Providence. Thanks for joining us, Dan.
Andy, appreciate it, man.
The Heart of the Nation will host the A-10 Men's Basketball Championship at Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C. 5 days of nonstop basketball action, March 7th through 11th, 2018. Buy your tickets now at Ticketmaster.com.
And now joining us here on the Atlantic 10 podcast, Dayton head coach Shauna Green. Thanks for joining us, Shauna.
Thanks for having me, Andy. I appreciate it.
So in your brief tenure, your second time around at Dayton, obviously a huge success in year one, getting to the NCAA tournament, winning the regular season and the conference tournament title. And now as you enter year two, off to another solid start with the program. When you saw that this job was open, what attracted you the most?
Obviously I'd been there as an assistant for 3 years. So, when everything happened and I saw that, coach had resigned and stepped down, my first initial thought, because I had connection with the program, was, it was right to coach and hopefully he was okay and everything was fine. And then, later on that day, the AD, Neil, had reached out to me. So it wasn't even something really that, I had too much time to think about. It happened fairly quickly with it being mid-September, early September. And again, having been involved in the program for 3 years as an assistant, for me, it was a no-brainer. This is a program that I had so much respect for and what we had built it into. And coming off my last year there as an assistant, we went to the Elite Eight. So I knew all the great things about Dayton and about the administration and about, what they had. And so for me, it was obviously a no-brainer.
Obviously I've covered men's basketball for a long time, and I've seen what that program's about, how invested the community is in it, the athletic department, the entire university. Obviously they've had great success with the first four. What is it about the Dayton basketball community that makes it such an easy call to go back there, whether you're on the men's side or the women's side?
Yeah. I mean, it's a special place. It really is. I've been, to different places and some great places and some great institutions, but there's something special about Dayton, and it's the fans, it's the people. It's the people, at the school. It's the community. They love basketball. It's not, it's a basketball town. That's what we revolve around. And I mean, look at the men's side. They sell out every game, no matter win or lose. I mean, they're there and they're present. And same thing with the women. I mean, we have great crowds, great support. You walk around in the grocery store in town and people know who you are, and they care about women's basketball. And I think that's unique and it's special. So this is it's just a great place, and it's all about the people. That's what makes it that way.
I was looking at your schedule. I mean, how much does the fact that Dayton has such this rich tradition of supporting no matter what allowed you guys to schedule actually pretty decent teams that come into Dayton, and certainly from Power 5 type conferences that maybe other schools in an A-10 or conferences comparable may have a harder time getting them on their home court?
Yeah, and it's been a struggle for us a little bit. Even when I was an assistant there, it's hard to get some people to come play us. And believe me, scheduling is not always fun. We get a lot of no's, but we've gotten a few throughout the years, and it's always great. I think that teams know that they're going to come. They're going to have a great atmosphere. Hopefully, we're going to give them a competitive game, and it'll be a great RPI game for them, going down the road, because we're always going to schedule tough. But, it's getting increasingly more difficult to get Power 5s to come play at our home court. I think it will continue that way with everyone. A lot of the conferences expanding when you talk about scheduling. I don't think it's going to get any easier, but we're going to keep trying. We're going to keep, playing the hardest non-conference schedule that we can possibly play in order to position ourselves for an at-large if we don't win the A-10 conference tournament. It's what we've always done here, and we're fortunate to have an athletic director that is very, very good with helping us and sitting down and trying to compose the best conference schedule or non-conference schedule we can, again, to try to get those at-large berths.
So if someone said, okay, define for me what the identity of a Shauna Green coach team is, how would you answer that?
Mm-hmm. Our identity in terms of basketball, it's really simplified, but we talk about it every day and we practice it every day. And number one, we defend. We're going to defend. We're going to be tough. We're going to, containment, and we're going to force contested shots. And then we're going to rebound. And then lastly, you have to do those two things in order to get to what people have kind of always known us for, and that's a running, high-paced team. But in number one, you got to defend. And if you look at that, I think just the culture of our program, it's always been about family. It's always been about the relationships. And we're gonna be together. We're gonna play really, really hard. We're gonna be tough. We're just gonna do things the right way. And that's what we talk about on a daily basis. Work hard, give everything we can out there for one another. And it's really simple. When you do things as hard as you possibly can, you do them the right way, you treat people right, usually success is going to follow you. And that's kind of the blueprint that we've used, this past, year and a half.
Shauna, obviously men's basketball is going through a lot of self-reflection right now. Where do you think the women's game is?
I think that's a good question. I think we're in a good spot of it. I think we got to continue to get better, and we got to continue, to grow and get our game out there. Get it out more, on national TV. And I know a lot of people are kind of up in arms right now about not having as many games on TV, and but I think that if we can get it out there, I think people will enjoy it. I think it's a pure form of basketball, and we don't have a lot of the things in the spotlight that the men are going on right now, in terms of the recruiting stuff and all of that. But I think that we just need to continue to try to get it out in front of more people, because I think people will really love, like I said, the pure the technique involved in the game, and we don't have the pure athleticism as some of the men's teams, but the fundamentals and the teamwork, and I just think we got to continue to push it forward and to help it grow.
To that point, what I have found in talking to a lot of college basketball players, male and female, and coaches, that really the onus, it seems, is almost on you, meaning not you, Shauna Green, but you, the coaches, you the participants in the game, because you can't necessarily rely exclusively now on the television networks to deliver the product for you. You've got, you could stream games, you can use social media to get your message out, to inform and also show the personalities on your team about your coaches. How much do you think that burden is now on the coaches and players to really
Mm-hmm.
deliver that product rather than necessarily relying on whether or not the networks come through for you guys?
I agree with you. I really do. And I think now with the social media, I think that I've always thought that, I'm just my personality. I think instead of, complaining and saying, hey, they need to do more, well, what can we do? What we need to look in the mirror and how can we grow our own program and get it out there? And I think, for us, I think if you would look at our social media, we try to do just that. And we don't have some of the resources that maybe a Power 5 has and a person just in charge of, Twitter and everything else, but we utilize everything that we can in order to get our culture and those behind the scenes, how do they get to know our women on our team? Get that out there. And I think that we've done a pretty good job of portraying that via social media. And I think that it's all about that. We, instead of just complaining and pointing fingers, how can we grow it, and what can we do to get our program out there, through everything that is at our fingertips right now. So I think you're 100% right. I think that we gotta look in the mirror and do more for our own game instead of just, pointing fingers at someone else. There's no question about it.
And last year, the Mississippi State victory over UConn, obviously it was sort of taking down Goliath. But what did that do? Just that one simple game, that last possession, in terms of knocking off a giant, which clearly they still are. But what did that do you think, for the rest of the country to show that it can be done, that we're not just UConn and everyone else?
Yeah, I think it was great. I think it gave everyone a little bit of, I don't know if hope's the right word, but it's like, people can beat them. Now, we played UConn last year. We played them, 2 years ago in the Elite Eight game. I played them when I was at Providence. I mean, what Gino's done there, it's absolutely unbelievable. And it is the program that everyone wants to be like. And, yeah, they win, but I look at how they do things, and I look at the process of it and how hard they work. I remember when I was an assistant at Providence and sitting there watching them warm up, and that's, the Maya Moores and all of them when I was there. I mean, they do things the right way. They work, they work nonstop all the time. And I mean, I think that if we say, hey, that's bad for the game, I don't agree with that. I think it's great for the game. I think that, we need to learn from them and see what he's done there. But I also think that seeing someone knock them off, gave everyone, hey, they can be beat. And, I think that just is a parity that is going to continue. Now I think you see it more in the women's game. Different people are getting into the Final Fours. It's not just, your 2 or 3 schools all the time. And I think that is good, for the game as well. And I think as more you look at the talent as it's younger and the more athleticism that's starting to show up in the women's side, not everyone can go to just UConn or, your Tennessees. I mean, there's definitely, it's dispersing throughout different colleges. And I think that's only going to make the game better overall.
All right, Shauna. So when we get to the A-10 tournament in March, who's the one player that you think you're going to be talking about on Dayton that maybe did not get the kind of preseason hype that she deserved or maybe had earned at that juncture?
We have our staples of our people that everyone expects, but I think someone that's really made growth in this offseason is our sophomore, Jayla Scaife. Just really, really grew, and it's more just about that freshman and sophomore year of knowing what to expect and knowing the consistency of what it takes on a daily basis in order to get where you want to get. And she's just an unbelievable player that, has the ability to score and score over people. And again, in the women's game, for a player to be able to rise up and literally shoot over people, you don't see it all the time. And she has an uncanny knack just to be able to find a way to put the ball in the basket. And I think she's just going to continue to grow and and get better, because just her work ethic right now and her process, we talk about that all the time, the process, and every day she's being consistent. And I'm really excited to see, she's only a sophomore, and to see where she, in the next few months, how far she goes and what she continues to improve upon.
And Shauna, we're going to be joined by Jackie Kemph from St. Louis on the podcast. Mm-hmm. If you're to sort of describe not just her impact at St. Louis, but just how she impacts a game, what would you say?
She's a great player. I mean, and you see what she's done. She's really been that player, that Lisa got there, that has been that consistent force and really took them to another level and took the program to another level. I have nothing but great things to say about her. I mean, she leads them. She leads them. If she's off the court, they're a completely different team, and it's a credit to her. She makes everyone else better. She's tough. She's gritty. I love how she plays, and playing them, you got to do something about her if you want a chance to beat them, because she's just that impactful on the floor, and just, I mean, I don't know her personally, but just you can tell she's a great leader, and it's just one of those type of kids you would definitely want on your team. And I know Lisa probably wish she had another 4 years with her. So.
Well, Shauna, we appreciate you taking some time with us.
Thank you so much, Andy. I appreciate it.
Hey, A-10 fans, join us at the Richmond Coliseum in Richmond, Virginia, March 2nd through the 4th for the Atlantic 10 Women's Basketball Championship. Purchase tickets at the Richmond Coliseum box office, Ticketmaster.com, or by calling Ticketmaster at 800-745-3000.
And now joining us here on the A-10 podcast, St. Louis's Jackie Kemph, who's on the verge of being not just, well, she's already got it. She's already the all-time assist leader in school history, but on the verge of being also their all-time scorer, which is quite a combination for the senior guard from Arlington Heights, Illinois. Jackie, as you just take a step back, put that in perspective, what that means to have scoring and assists all-time at SLU. What does that do for you?
I mean, it's obviously a cool thing to have, and I know Sadie has it right now, and she was joking last year how, oh, yeah, I'm going to have it for a year, like that kind of a thing, which was funny. But, I mean, coming into college, you never really set that kind of a goal for yourself, like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do this. It's more like, I want to have a successful career, I want to get a degree, I want to do this stuff, not really personal accolades or anything like that. But, I mean, I think that's just a credit to my teammates. I mean, if it wasn't for Sadie last year and it wasn't for teammates in the past and Jenny and Jordan and all of them this year, I mean, I never would have had the assists that obviously comes from them making shots. And then the points, I mean, I don't know, I've been fortunate enough to have the opportunity to play all 4 years, so I think that's kind of just something that not many people get the chance to do. So I think it's more coming down to that than anything else.
I was just talking to Shauna Green, the Dayton head coach, and obviously was heaping praise on you and what you've meant to St. Louis, and really, and I'm paraphrasing here, being sort of that anchor for this program. How do you view that responsibility that you have to take on, that you have to be that constant presence for SLU?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's kind of the role of point guards on the court anyways. But really, we have 6 seniors, so I think having the opportunity to be on the court the majority of the game helps with that role and kind of having the point guard, so you have to kind of listen to what's going on and kind of be that coach on the court. That's always what people say. But we have 6 seniors this year, and I mean, I've came up with 5 of them since my freshman year. We had all 5 of us are still here. We had a transfer in, Paige Rockers, a couple years ago, so she's the 6th. So, I mean, really we just have a great core to the team, and then we have built around that so well. I think everyone fits in really well with the team, like Jordan, obviously our only starter that's not a senior, and I just think it really works well for everyone that we have kind of that mix to it.
So if I were to ask you, how do you define a winner? What would you say?
I don't know. That's a good one. I guess it's just refusing to lose. I think we hear that a lot, and I think that's a big thing. Is it's easy to go in there and just be like, okay, I'm just going to do my best, and that's not going to beat every time. You can't just be like, oh, well, if I score every time, we're going to win the game. Like, that's not true, and everyone knows that. You got to come out, you got to refuse to lose, you got to do what you have to do to win that game at that moment. So I think one of our coaches, Coach Geary, one of the assistants, he says that all the time, and at practice and things like that. And I don't know. I think that kind of resonates with me.
How hard is it, though, to stay in the moment, each possession by possession, each drill by each drill?
I think it's really hard and something that we've struggled with early on in this year, trying to get better without Sadie, because she was a big factor in that last year, being able to stay in the moment. But I mean, obviously we've had a couple leads and we've lost them later in the game this year. And I think that comes down to that. If you're not going to be in the moment each drill, each game, you can't do it in games if you're not going to do it at practice. So it kind of all feeds off itself. So it's definitely a tough thing, but you need it. And if you want to be a competitor and you want to win drills, that's how you get better. And I think if you're a player, you know that, but people outside of it don't necessarily see that all the time.
So another thing, Jackie, that people don't see are the demands that are placed on, high-level college athletes. And I don't care if you're a women's basketball player, men's basketball player, football player, soccer, whatever. You have to be very disciplined if you're going to survive and succeed, if you will, at the college level. What is the most challenging part of making sure that you have that balance, that you get your degree, and that, as you're in your case actually working for a master's, but you're striving to have both, to have excellence in both?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big thing St. Louis emphasizes more so than most schools, which I'm sure all schools emphasize because it's important everywhere. But, I mean, I really think we have all the things set in place to have success academically as well as on the court. I mean, we have an incredible academic counselor who sets up all our tests and things like that. But obviously, for me personally, missing classes, that's the worst. That is something that you try to avoid at all costs, making up tests and things like that. But my team we've had really set records for GPAs, and we've had a really great success in that regard. So I think having everyone around me that's also striving for success has only helped me to also study on the road and really prepare for tests and things like that while we're traveling, while we have games to prepare for. So a lot of it comes from who you surround yourself with, and I think that's a big thing. People are like, oh, I want to go to the biggest school, I want to go to the biggest name school, best conference, but you got to really see who you're surrounding yourself with, and the players and the coaches here at St. Louis are just incredible. So a lot of it comes from them.
Jackie, so often right now we're talking about how college athletes should be paid, they're exploited, and they should, benefit off their likeness. Mm-hmm. Where do you stand on what is the most pressing issue right now that you think college athletes at your level, in the Atlantic 10, that kind of level, mm-hmm. really are lacking at this point?
I mean, yeah, you hear about the athletes getting paid, and I'm not sure if that's as big of a thing at the level that we're at. We're obviously not the top where you have video games, you have all this stuff with people's likeness everywhere. But I think just really basketball in general, like getting that degree and things like that. And I know women's side, obviously you have to be 21, I think, to enter a draft or anything like that. So there's more of you're going to go there for 4 years, you're going to get your degree, you're going to play basketball. But that degree that sets you up for life. That is kind of your stepping stone to the rest of whatever you're going to do, whether or not you play basketball after college or not. I mean, you can always fall back on that degree and having that degree. And I think that taking that degree seriously and making sure you pick something that you want, and that you really think, oh, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life, not necessarily just this is an easy degree to get. And so I think that's a big factor. I mean, we have a lot of variety on our team. We have, Jordan's a nursing major, which is just, I could not even imagine trying to do that with basketball. She has clinicals and things like that. We have a couple other, we have Paige, we have Paige, and we have Kendra, who are also like in the medical field and things like that. We have a lot of business, finance.
But look, Jackie, let me ask you this. I mean, do you feel like you need more money? You need something besides whether it's cost attendance or something? Is there something you think as a college athlete that you are lacking right now?
I don't think so. I think it's whether or not you're going to take the opportunity to, obviously you don't get money you could have if you had a part-time job or things like that, but a lot of that is I'm saving up to pay for college. Well, as athletes, we have that paid for. So
right, you're going to leave with no debt.
Exactly, and that's crazy. I have a twin sister at SLU right now, and she will not be doing that. So, yeah, I mean, you have no school debt. That's what most people are working for in college. And I've had internships, I've had paid internships and things like that. So, if you needed the extra money, you have that opportunity. And and whether or not you have to work on your game and things like that, you don't have time, I understand. But I don't know, I've never seen the perk of that, especially even at the higher levels. I mean, you have 1 year and then you're going off and you're going to make millions of dollars. So, but yeah, I mean, we have our school paid for, and I think that that's more than 90% of people. So.
Now, with your twin sister, how have you guys been able to balance the fact that, you know, you're sort of more in the headlines, you're the athlete at the highest level, yet I'm sensing that obviously there's a closeness, and you're at the same school. I mean, how have you been able to balance that?
Yeah, I mean, I think she's kind of had that forever. I mean, with our basketball team in high school, she always played all the sports, and I mean, I don't think it affects her at all. I mean, she'd rather not compete. She'd rather just kind of do her own thing, and she comes to every single game. Sometimes she's up there doing homework in the stands. It's kind of hilarious, actually. But no, I mean, she's incredibly supportive, and she's always been there. So.
Well, Jackie, we appreciate it. I know you've got some decisions to make after the season with, you know, do you try to play professionally or take a job? But you don't have to worry about that now. Now you got to deal with, obviously, the season at hand. We appreciate you taking some time with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
14 teams come to compete, but only one will win the crown. The heart of the nation will host the Atlantic 10 Men's Basketball Championship at Capital One Arena in March of 2018. 5 days of non-stop basketball action. There can only be one champion. Don't miss this major college championship at Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C., March 7th through 11th, 2018. Buy your tickets now at Ticketmaster.com.